Romance is not dead, but it's been smothered and crushed and suffocated into a superficial shadow of its former self, because psychologically speaking, the romantic state, or at least the so-called romantic state where you're falling head over heels for the man or woman of your dreams, is fundamentally about two basic principles. You've got perception and appreciation. You can't appreciate what you don't perceive, and if you're not perceiving in the first place, you're not going to be able to have the gratitude and all of the feelings to accompany that internal rush of romantic infatuation. But there are so many levels of complexity around this topic, so in this video I'm going to try and break down things like Valentine's Day and the lie of romantic love to get to a deeper truth and a deeper possibility of perception and appreciation, which isn't hooked on an individual man or woman, whether that be your partner or the next fling that you feel drawn towards. I want you to unlock something a little bit deeper. We're going to be doing it by bringing out an extract or two from Sam Keen's wonderful Jungian psychology book, The Passionate Life, which I recommend you bring up into your cart and buy yourself from whatever secondhand bookseller. But we're also going to be answering this question from Callum, who asked if I would consider doing a video on the ways in which modern society damages us from my perspective. So let's break it down into hopefully a very short video and that goes straight to the point. The issue with things like Valentine's Day, the issue with things like romantic pop songs that idealize the other at the detriment of our own emotional well-being, our own consistent nervous system regulation, is that we fundamentally give away the energy and place it in the external world, not in an entirely inappropriate way. I'm not here to say that you should bring all of the love from within. That is utter nonsense. We're relational creatures. We need to have a relationship with the environment and with other people. But the issue that we have with romantic love is that we fixate all of this attention in a very projective way. And if you understand psychology, that you know that a projection is launched based on unresolved issues from the past or fantasy visions of the future, a variety of complexes related to mother, father, superiority, inferiority. You could go into the anima and animus, which I'm going to be doing in a few videos on this channel. I already have. There's some more coming up. There's an idea of twin flames. There's so many particular projection dynamics, and you can't unravel all of them. You're never going to be escaping the allure of romantic love completely, but what you do have the possibility of doing is putting romance and romanticism in its proper place, which isn't withdrawing it all from the world, but it is withdrawing a proportion of that from the individual that you're fixated on, and it's finding a way to perceive the wider reality. Because, for example, I'll give this example. Two of my closest male friends, one's a painter and one is a photographer. And it's wonderful to speak to these guys because they know what it means to have perception. They can see a scene out of nowhere. They can see how the light's falling on the trunk and how another element of the composition is creating this wonderful effect in the foreground and the background, or maybe the intricacies of one cloud compared to another cloud, and they want to capture it because they perceive it. When we're falling in love and we're falling into fantasy, we genuinely see something beautiful about the other. Maybe it's their smile, maybe it's their laugh, maybe we perceive something a little bit deeper and we perceive a character trait, or maybe we perceive potential, which is maybe a golden shadow that we've put over them without their consent. It doesn't matter what's happening, you're fundamentally perceiving, and this goes back into the idea of romantic love at the absolute core, so please hold on to it. With a painter and an artist, my two friends in this example, they have perception for nature, and in the case of my photographer friend, a particular appreciation for story and composition within human environments. So within cities, to be able to do something where you're capturing people within the environment and telling a story, you have to see. But to be able to see, you have to be clear, and you have to have nothing really blocking up your perception. And I want you to just take this metaphor that when you're wearing the romantic glasses and you're looking at just the man or the woman who's going to solve all of your issues, or you're fixating like a cyclops with a laser beam on that one person, you are missing the bigger picture. And you're missing the deeper possibility of love and connection to the world that you exist in, which moves us over to the second point of appreciation. But before we go into there, and it will all come together, I know I'm not dealing with the basic tropes of Valentine's Day or what's going on when we fall in love. They're boring, basic, introductory level topics. Most of the individuals who are watching this video, I imagine yourself included, are far beyond falling for the scam consumer culture of what's going on with a Valentine's Day tradition, or what's going on with playing this game of cat and mouse or savior and victim. We're beyond that. We're talking about the deeper possibility of focused consciousness and creating a loving feeling on the inside, which can then create loving relationships with the environment and with our romantic partners. Let's bring out a quote from Sam Keen, and this is a fantastic book about the evolution of love and eros, but a particular quote I want to bring out that really ties into this video in particular. Quoting from the book, "Intimacy is one of the many disguises of eros. Through romance, we catch the first glimpse of how the world might look through the eyes of the heart. How the world might look through the eyes of the heart." Fascinating phrase. We sniff the first scent of full human potential. The impulse towards adoration and communion, although misplaced, is real. That's exactly what I was trying to illustrate with my two friends and their various artistic mediums of perceiving the world and adoring the environment. They have the same exact energetic propensity or the energetic flow of adoration. It's going somewhere, but it's not narrowed in on one individual. Because if you've ever fallen in love or had a crush on someone, you'll notice at a certain point, all of that focused energy falls away and becomes flat until you see someone else and then you focus it in their direction. It's an unsustainable way of living because you're doing narrow rather than broad. If you've ever been up on top of a mountain and you've looked over at the scene, you might have fallen into something like the open-hearted, wide peripheral gaze, where you get a little bit glassy in your eyes. And you're taking it all in, it's a little bit unfocused. And you're feeling it. You're feeling the scene, you're seeing the hills or the ocean or the mountain range. You're not focused on just the peak. Maybe your attention from a reality perception perspective fixates on a certain tree or a certain encounter between two deers running across the field, or maybe there's a dolphin leaping out the ocean. But that moment of fixity then becomes broad all over again. But the issue with romantic love is that we're focused fundamentally on one point and it makes us sick because it's not the full picture. Yes, there's a place in relationship for the sensually exciting, fantasy, imaginal aspects of love. It shouldn't be the foundation, but I'd want you, if you were with your husband or your wife, to be able to have moments where you dance together, or you have a particularly romantic bedroom encounter, or a particularly romantic little gesture here and there. That's something that I want you to have in life, but the background appreciation, which is the second point, should always be the focus. You can't perceive that which you don't appreciate, and you can't appreciate that which you don't perceive because you have to be motivated to look in the first place. Within your relationship context, if you're already with someone who you perceive as being worthy of the romantic ideal, then the challenge of true, deeper level intimacy is turning that flighty, high charge or low depressive anxiety going in and out of do they want me, do they not want me, into a deeper appreciation, which is fundamentally anchored in your own self-identity. One of the most fascinating things about pop songs, and once you notice this, you won't be able to unnotice this, is that there's a very subtle superiority and inferiority complex which is often happening, and it will go either way. Either it's I'm in the superior position because they broke up with me and now I'm gonna go and get my own way in the world, and you go girl, or crush it king, whatever it might be, and you're gonna go and get the better partner, or you're gonna go and get the better job. It's like motivational pseudo-empowerment energy. Sure, superiority, inferiority, you're still caught in the dynamic, or maybe alternatively it's the I can't believe they chose me, I'm not good enough for them, and the way that they are is just, it's so bizarre. Not just pop songs, but also a variety of different genres where fundamentally, at an unconscious level, there is a self-diminutive, shrinking effect, and they get placed on the pedestal. You don't need to stay in that dynamic. You can perceive the beauty of the person that you love, and you can perceive the beauty of the person inside, and marry them together. But that second aspect there of inner perception and inner appreciation is often what keeps these dynamics running on loop forever. And this is where it really comes into this idea of the modern neurosis. You'll swing in either direction, and both of them will make you sick. If you focus on the other, and you love them at the detriment of focusing on your love for yourself, you clearly have an issue. But if you get so self-loving, which really in many places is actually this, again, secondary, superficial self-love, which is built on things like status or looks or maybe some kind of achievement in the world or some kind of passing mood, it's not a reliable foundation of self-love. When that dips, and it will dip, when it crumbles, and it will crumble, the easiest way to get a quick fix is to latch onto another target projectively and go through the sensually exciting, biologically supported pathway of getting a nice injection of good feelings. But both of them are fundamentally unstable. The energetic intensity of the high highs and the low lows is the one issue. The intensity of direction too much towards them or too much towards you is an issue. But at the very least, do not be caught in the dynamic. And this is a really common issue. And if you look deep in your own shadow work, which is something that I've explored at length in my shadow work curriculum, you can see it up on the screen. I've got an entire module 7, where we're looking at the sensual shadow of romantic relationships. You can see the link in the description. One of the major issues that I found through exploring these books, and books like Sam Keen's The Passionate Life, is that people who get hooked on the high charge, high romantic vision of who their partner might be, they usually have a lot of self-hate or at the very least self-shame, and they use it as a way of bypassing their own wounding. And you see it reflected in the pop songs. You see it reflected in the, I can't believe they chose me, who am I to deserve such a wonderful person, or the inflation towards the grandiose opposite. Both of them are rooted in unresolved shame, because it doesn't have to be that way. Perception takes you to the first stage of being able to actually connect with an individual or the environment. But deep appreciation is fundamentally a win-win scenario. I won't go as far to say that the tree or the plant or the robin appreciates being appreciated and you're in a symbiotic relationship with nature as the environmental example. But when you're with your man or your woman and you're in that moment of mutual appreciation and mutual affection, you have tapped into something very real. But that should be framed within the context of your own reliable state of self-romanticization, which isn't to be confused with self-inflation and this kind of like closing off into the world and, you're all obsessed and narcissistic and arrogant. I'm not talking about that. A humble self-appreciation where your partner elevates that baseline feeling and you do the same for them, rather than you're both playing basically the self-shaming ping-pong match of one of you goes into the shame state, the other one goes into the idealized state, and maybe on a particularly romantic weekend you both get joined together in the manic romantic infatuation hurricane. But then you dip back down and the arguments are bound to happen when the communication breaks down between the two of you, because you're keeping things a secret, you're not communicating directly. There's so many issues on the other end of that. Where do we take this after a wide-ranging philosophical discussion? Let's bring it back to the absolute essential point. Romance isn't dead, but we're misunderstanding the true meaning of romanticization, of self, of other, of environment. It's not only not the full picture, it's an aspect of life. We need to expand our perception, and once we see, we can appreciate. And if you truly appreciate what's there, you will not be hooked on the superficial, wow, that person's really attractive, or ooh, he looks really impressive. You'll be able to feel the subtle sense. You'll be able to have a deeper connection with what actually matters in your relationships, and you will effectively be at least 90% immune from getting swept up in romantic visions and yet again another projected fantasy that leads to heartbreak. Usually people grow out of this gradually as they get towards their midlife, but even then there's these situations of people suddenly falling in love with someone 20 years younger than them, and of course anima psychology, projections going in all directions. If you have a leaned back, steady anchoring in your heart, a fundamental self-appreciation, you have an appreciation for the world that you live in because you can go and enjoy nature, you can enjoy the community that you're part of, and hopefully as well enjoy the work that you're participating in. The third aspect of this picture, self, environment, and the romantic other, won't be so sticky. You won't fall into the trap of idealizing or putting yourself down because you're engaged with a much bigger story. And that's the most practical advice I could possibly give. I can't go into the specifics of every exact situation, but if you expand your perception of self and environment, you will naturally expand your perception of the romantic other, and you're going to fall out of the trap that Sam Keen very, very, very accurately and very directly addresses throughout this book of overly adoring the individual at the detriment of feeling more of the overall eros and fulfillment, and arguably some of the deeper spiritual fulfillment of being rooted in the real world and seeing what's there and feeling what's there with all your senses. It's a complex topic, and I think we actually need to go over to the very next video where I'm going to be looking at the issue of twin flames. We're going to be looking at the biblical and the spiritual and the psychological. It's a controversial topic, but we need to have a grounded conversation. I'll see you over there.